Welcome to episode 11 of the Ulysses Unlocked podcast, where we analyze Ulysses by James Joyce one page at a time. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment to support us.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something that really gets at the heart of what we try to do here. We're taking just a couple pages, really dense pages, from James Joyce's Ulysses.
Right at the end of first episode.
Exactly, pages 14 and 15. And we're going to try and unpack this incredible tangle of history, theology, and just raw character stuff that Joyce packs in there.
Yeah, it's the end of Telemachus. Stephen Dedalus is finally physically leaving the Martello Tower. He's leaving Mulligan and Haynes behind. All that tension that's been simmering, it kind of boils over into actual movement.
Real departure.
A real departure. But before he walks out that door, Joyce just unloads this arsenal of references, literary, historical. It all comes together to really show us who these guys are. And that core tension, it's something we really need to grasp for Stephen going forward, isn't it? It's that classic, almost painful struggle. The broke artist up against, well, reality. You've got Stephen, cynical, maybe desperate, crashing right into Mulligan's total theatricality, his performance. And it all plays out over this really unpoetic subject. Money.
Cold hard cash. Or the lack of it.
And the dignity involved or lost in chasing it.
That's exactly it. And our goal today really is to connect those dots for you. Show how much is going on in just these few lines. We'll go from Stephen's, grim financial situation to Mulligan's, performance art.
Which involves quoting Whitman while mocking Jesus.
Pretty much, yeah. And we'll trace these threads from, ancient Greek ideas right up to the dense logic of Thomas Aquinas. It's more than just him walking out. It's like a declaration of independence. Or maybe war, between two totally different ways of living and seeing art.
Okay, so let's jump in. It starts pretty sharply, doesn't it? Back at that breakfast table, all tense. And Mulligan, who just loves these little digs. Oh, yeah.
He kicks Stephen's foot under the table, just as Haynes, the rich English guy, is asking Stephen about his big Hamlet theory. Politely, maybe. Or maybe just making conversation.
Could be either with Haynes, but Stephen's reaction just blows up any chance of, high-minded chat. Haynes is trying to talk art theory.
Yeah.
And Stephen just cuts right through it. Would I make any money by it? Boom! Just like that. It completely changes the mood.
It really highlights the gap between them, doesn't it? Haynes is this privileged guy. Art is this, interesting hobby.
An intellectual exercise.
Right. And he laughs it off. I don't know. But that's the whole point for Stephen. He's poor, his genius, his ideas, that's all he has to sell. But how do you sell a thought, an aphorism? Theory doesn't pay the bills. Haynes will never get that.
And Mulligan gets it instantly. He sees Stephen has just, stuppered his attempt to kind of sell Stephen to Haynes. He leans over, really angry, with coarse vigor, the text says, and whispers, "You put your hoof in it now. What do you say that for?"
He basically accuses Stephen of ruining the pitch with his lousy leer and your gloomy Jesuit jibes. It shows how complicated Mulligan is, right? He torments Stephen, but he also sort of wants him to succeed.
As long as Mulligan looks good, setting it up.
Exactly. As long as there's something in it for him, or at least some reflected glory.
But Stephen seems, beyond caring about playing the game at this point. He just hammers home the money issue. It's the core problem for him, isn't it? The problem is to get money. From whom?
Yeah.
From the milkwoman or from him? It's a toss-up, I think.
Yeah, that little bit, some critics call it a breather, but it's actually really deep ethically. He sees only two options for help, and both feel wrong. He can beg from the poor milkwoman who's probably exploited herself.
Right.
It's just pity. No dignity there. Or he can take money from Haynes, the Englishman, the symbol of the colonizer, the upper class. That might mean cash, but it also feels like selling out, maybe performing for the patron. He sees little hope either way. It really defines that tightrope he's walking, how to be an artist without selling your soul or depending on the very people you critique.
And Mulligan's reaction to Stephen's despair, it's fascinating how quickly he shifts gears. Bang, bang, bang. 3 different personas.
Totally. First, he's angry, that coarse vigor. Then suddenly he's all tragic, sighing, putting a hand on Stephen's arm.
Right. From me, Kinch, he's offering genuine support.
Yeah, it sounds almost sincere for a split second. But then, poof, the mask is back on. That offer, if it was ever real, just vanishes. He instantly switches again, adopting Stephen's own cynicism.
To tell you the God's truth, I think you're right. Damn all else they're good for.
Exactly. And then, why don't you play them as I do? To hell with them all. Let us get out of the kip.
We should pause on that shift. Because is any of it real? That tragic sigh, was that just another bit of acting? Stephen's being serious, he's hit rock bottom, and Mulligan just can't handle that static despair. He has to make it dramatic, make it move.
Yeah, I think you're right. Sincerity doesn't fit his performance. It's bad theater for him.
Huh.
So he pivots back to cynicism, takes charge with the command to leave, and calling the tower a kip, slang for a dump or even a brothel.
Yeah.
It shows total contempt. Just moments ago, he was calling it the omphalos, the center of the world. The money crisis is dismissed. Time for the next scene. Time to leave this awful place.
And leaving isn't just leaving for Mulligan, is it? It has to be a production.
Oh, absolutely. Full-scale ritual.
He stood up, gravely ungirdled and disrobed himself of his gown like it's some sacred act, and then announces, Mulligan is stripped of his garments.
And that line, it lands differently if you know the context, the casting background, that Stephen absolutely lives and breathes, even if he's rejected it. Mulligan's basically comparing himself mockingly to Christ.
The 10th station of the cross.
Exactly, the Via Crucis. Jesus is stripped of his clothes. It's one of the most vulnerable, solemn moments in the Passion story.
And Stephen, the ex-Jesuit student, would know this intimately. He even thinks later about Christ at that moment. Stripped and whipped, was nailed like bat to barn door. It's an image of total humiliation.
And Mulligan just makes light of it, uses it for a gag. The deeper point here, maybe, is how repeating these incredibly charged rituals, even if the church art depicting them is bad art, as Stephen thinks, can just numb you. It dulls the meaning.
Right.
Mulligan turns Christ's suffering into cheap theatrics to justify his own dramatic exit. Then he empties his pockets, throws Stephen his used handkerchief, the snot rag, which is just another insult.
A final little jab.
Yeah. And then prepares to dress the character. He needs the right costume.
Which leads to the whole primrose waistcoat thing and the demand for puce gloves and green boots. Accessories are key, and this is where he delivers that incredible line justifying his inconsistency.
Contradiction. Do I contradict myself? Very well, then. I contradict myself. Mercurial Malachi.
It's just, wow, the layers there.
It's amazing, isn't it? He's quoting Walt Whitman, Song of Myself. One of the great declarations of American transcendentalism. I am large, I contain multitudes.
A statement about embracing the vastness, the complexity, the contradictions within the human soul. Huge, profound stuff.
And Mulligan uses it to, what? Justify wearing weird-colored gloves with green boots and a yellow waistcoat.
Pretty much. That's the outrageous fashion of the fin de siècle avant-garde he's aiming for.
Exactly. So the philosophical depth of Whitman's line, the self, as this huge, all-encompassing thing, gets shrunk down to being an excuse for fashion choices. It perfectly shows Mulligan as a poser. He grabs big ideas like accessories.
And quoting Whitman itself was probably fashionable among the artsy set in Dublin and London then, right?
Oh, yeah. It was part of the pose, like wearing the puce gloves.
Okay, so he's performing this role of the bohemian genius. Too complex for rules, but really he's just getting dressed. What about the name he gives himself? Mercurial Malachi. What's packed into that?
It's super layered, too. Malachi is Hebrew, means my messenger. He's the last of the minor prophets in the Old Testament. Mulligan even jokes about it later, planning a play, The Lord Has Spoken to Malachi. So, biblical vibes.
Okay.
But then mercurial, that links him straight to Mercury, the Roman god Hermes for the Greeks, the messenger god, known for being quick, tricky, eloquent, all things Mulligan tries to be.
So he's blending Jewish prophets and Roman gods.
Yeah. He's crafting this persona that mixes Judeo-Christian tradition with classical paganism. It's deliberate. He sees himself as this divine messenger, maybe, but an anti-Christian one. The guy who wants to Hellenize Ireland, pull it out of its Catholic gloom into some new pagan aesthetic age.
A self-made myth.
Completely.
Yeah.
And Stephen even clocks it later, thinking about his own Latin Quarter hat, connecting Mulligan's whole outfit to that sort of continental bohemian intellectual image.
Yeah.
Every detail, even the name, reinforces Mulligan as this flashy, contradictory, but ultimately maybe shallow figure.
Right, so costume's on, performance is ready. Haynes calls out, "Are you coming, you fellows?" Mulligan makes his grand exit, grave words and gait. But then Stephen does something really significant physically.
Yeah, this is key. Stephen grabs his ash plant, his walking stick, which is its own symbol.
All right, represents his journey.
And he pulled to the slow iron door and locked it. He put the huge key in his inner pocket.
Locking Mulligan out.
Physically locking him out. It's the concrete action that follows all the emotional and intellectual separation we've seen building. He has the key now. He's not coming back to live under Mulligan's roof, under his influence. It feels final.
But before they actually leave the area, there's this quick back and forth that suddenly grounds everything in, like Irish history and British bureaucracy. Haynes asks a really mundane question.
Yeah, super practical. Do you pay rent for this tower? And Mulligan says, 12 quid.
Then Stephen adds the killer detail. To the Secretary of State for War.
Boom! Just like that, we're out of art and philosophy and smack bang into the reality of British rule in Ireland. They're paying rent for this tower to the military arm of the occupying power.
Which leads Haynes to ask about the tower itself. Martello, you call it? And Mulligan gives the history bit. Billy Pitt had them built when the French were on the sea.
We should probably spend a moment on this because the setting itself is so loaded. William Pitt, the younger Billy Pitt, was the British PM. These towers were built along the coastlines.
Defense structures.
Exactly. Built during the Napoleonic Wars, mostly. It was a defense against potential French invasion, especially after France tried to help the Irish rebellions in 1796 and 1798.
And that phrase, when the French were on the sea, that's not just casual history, is it? It resonates.
Oh, absolutely. It's a direct quote, almost, from a famous Irish nationalist ballad, the Shan Van Vocht, the poor old woman Ireland personified. It's a revolutionary song, hoping the French would land and liberate Ireland.
Will the French be on the sea? Yes, they'll be here ere long. Wow, so they're living inside this monument to Irish revolutionary hopes being dashed and British defensiveness.
Pretty much. A relic of historical failure in colonial power. Paid for by Irish taxes, probably, but rented from the British War Office.
Which makes Mulligan's next line even more absurdly grand, doesn't it? But ours is the omphalos.
Totally. He takes this symbol of military occupation and failed revolution and declares it the navel of the world, the sacred center from Greek myth.
It's peak Mulligan, turning defeat into personal mythology.
But then, characteristically, the mood shifts again as they walk away. He goes back to being the clown. He starts whacking plants with his towel.
Yeah, club with his heavy bat while the leader shoots at ferns or grasses, shouting, "Down, sir! How dare you, sir!"
What's funny is scholars have actually traced that line. It sounds like random silliness, but apparently, "Down, sir! How dare you, sir!" was a pretty common, rather pompous way for upper-class Brits in the 19th century to talk to their dogs or servants. Yeah. Sources mention it was quite widespread, using sir, even for pets.
Yeah.
So Mulligan, the would-be great Irish poet and Hellenizer, defaults to this sort of stuffy, comical, upper-class British phrase when he's clowning around. It kind of shows how deep that cultural influence runs, even for someone who claims to reject it.
That's brilliant. And then the final joke as he leaves, still with his grave words and gait, and going forth he met Butterly.
Classic Irish wit, right? Using deep religious knowledge for a completely irreverent punchline. He's parodying the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 26, verse 75. After Peter denies Christ 3 times.
To cock crows.
Right. And Peter goes out and wept bitterly. Mulligan just swaps wept bitterly for met Butterly, which is just a common Irish surname.
It shows they know their scripture inside out.
Absolutely.
But also that they're totally willing to use it for a laugh, to sort of deflate its sacredness. Joyce throws in other jokes like that, about Lazarus, the gravedigger. It shows how these texts were part of the cultural furniture, material for jokes as much as for piety. Okay, so after all that drama, the history lesson, the jokes, Haynes tries to bring it back to the original point. The intellectual core, Mulligan promised. What is your idea of Hamlet?
Yeah, the moment Mulligan supposedly set up for Stephen. But does Mulligan let Stephen answer? Of course not.
He deflects, big time.
Totally. Throws his hands up, claims it's too much for the morning. No, no, Buck, Mulligan shouted in pain. I'm not equal to Thomas Aquinas and the 55 reasons he has made out to prop it up. Wait till I have a few pints in me first.
And Stephen's reply is just flat, exhausted. It has waited so long it can wait longer, which is amazing foreshadowing, right? Because it does wait. It waits until the whole Scylla and Charybdis chapter in the library.
Exactly. That's where the theory finally gets aired. But the reference Mulligan uses to dodge the question Thomas Aquinas that's really important for understanding Stephen's mind. Why Aquinas? Why bring in this massive figure of Catholic philosophy to talk about Shakespeare?
Well, Aquinas is like the gold standard for rigorous logical thinking in that tradition, isn't he? Scholasticism, the Summa Theologiae, trying to mesh Aristotle with Christian faith.
Precisely. And for Stephen, who's dumped the faith but still respects the intellectual machinery, Aquinas represents that ultimate structure, that rigorous logical way of building an argument. If Stephen's going to have a Hamlet theory, you can bet it's built with that kind of complexity in mind.
So Mulligan's implying Stephen's theory is that dense? that complicated.
Yeah, and the 55 reasons bit is a funny jab at that scholastic method. Breaking everything down into objections, replies, counter-replies. It's incredibly detailed.
Where does the number 55 come from? Is that specific?
It might be. Joyce could be referencing Aristotle's idea of 55 celestial spheres, linking Aquinas back to his philosophical hero. Or maybe it's just a comically large specific number to emphasize how ridiculously complex Mulligan is pretending the theory is. The point is, he's treating Stephen's literary theory like it's a major work of theology.
And Stephen clearly admires Aquinas despite the religious differences. There are those physical descriptions later.
Yeah, he thinks of him as Tun-belly and enjoys reading his gore-bellied works, his big-bellied works in Latin. It connects this high-level philosophy with a kind of earthy bodily reality, based on the tradition that Aquinas was, well, quite large.
And it's not just the structure Stephen admires, right? He actually uses Aquinas' specific terminology later on, thinking about his own guilt, his own thoughts.
That's right. Delectatio morosa, morose delectation.
Which means?
It's a technical term from Catholic moral theology, one of the 3 internal sins. It basically means taking pleasure in a sinful thought or fantasy, even if you don't intend to actually do the sinful act.
Wow. This sounds very Stephen Dedalus.
Doesn't it? His whole life is internal. Thoughts, guilt, desires he doesn't act on. But Aquinas gives him this precise theological label for the pleasure he might take in just thinking about something forbidden. It's a way of dissecting his own psychology with incredible precision.
So Aquinas provides the perfect excuse for Mulligan here. He makes Stephen's theory sound impossibly dense, requiring Aquinas-level brain power and maybe some alcohol to even approach it.
Exactly. It's a brilliant way to shut down the conversation without actually engaging. Protects Mulligan from having to listen to anything genuinely complex that might challenge his own, stylish superficiality.
And the final irony, of course, in Haynes, the guy who asked the question in the first place.
Totally skips the lecture. When Stephen actually gives his talk in the National Library later, Haynes isn't there.
What's he doing instead?
He's off buying a book. Douglas Hyde's Love Songs of Connaught, simple folk poetry. It just shows his interest was probably just a light curiosity, not deep intellectual engagement.
As the commentary notes point out, yeah, superficial politeness.
Right. And later, when Mulligan is making fun of Stephen's library performance, Haynes just sort of apologizes vaguely and says something like, Shakespeare is the happy hunting ground of minds that have lost their balance.
So the big complex theory, the 55 reasons, the Aquinas-level stuff, it loses out to a simple book of poems.
Completely. The perfect illustration of the artist's struggle, right?
Right.
Trying to get complex ideas heard, let alone paid for, in a world that often prefers the simple and marketable. Hashtag tag conclusion and final takeaway.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this deep dive up. In just these 2 pages, Joyce has laid out so much groundwork. Stephen's poverty versus his artistic integrity.
Mulligan's whole theatrical act, quoting Whitman to justify his clothes while mocking Christ.
The history embedded in the setting itself, the Martello Tower, the French invasion threat, the British War Office.
And introducing Aquinas as this benchmark for the kind of intellectual rigor Stephen values even uses on himself. It's not just chat. It's like every line is loaded with these complex markers of who they are.
Yeah, the main theme feels like that clash, doesn't it? The struggling artist versus the poseur who uses ideas like fashion accessories.
Definitely. Stephen chooses isolation and intellectual depth. Mulligan chooses performance and contradiction. And Stephen locking that door, taking the key. That feels like the turning point.
Right. That key, it's him physically taking control, choosing isolation maybe, deciding to go his own way, away from Mulligan, but he's locking the door to the omphalos, right? What Mulligan called the center of the world. Is he rejecting that center, or is he just clearing the decks to build his own?
That's a great question. And it makes you think about Mulligan's contradictions, too. He claims to contain multitudes, like Whitman, but it only seems to apply to, his wardrobe choices. Does real complexity, that demanding Aquinian rigor Stephen strives for, does it just lose out? Does it get drowned out by the louder, flashier, more easily digested performance?
And what does that mean for an artist like Stephen who refuses to play that game?
Exactly. Something to keep mulling over as we continue through Ulysses.